Hey, Zaka family! Zaka is launching an exclusive membership platform to provide you with career development workshops, coaching, community, and so much more. Go to ZakaConnect.com and sign up to receive information on how to access early registration and perks. Hello, everybody. This is Paul Herman, the Prince of Motivation, and host of Zaka Presents My Journey. We're creating this vulnerable and positive platform where you can get inspired and motivated from different leaders from our community. Today, our guest is Shameika Allison Chan, who is the Director, Chief of Staff, Office of the CEO at Honey Pot Company. Shameika, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Paul.
Oh, this title of yours is a tongue twister. I'm gonna let you know that, okay?
Okay.
But I can only imagine what that title, all the things and responsibilities you have with it. But before we dive in and let the listeners know a lot more about what you do, could you just give us a little bit more of your cultural background and where you're from?
Yes. So I am first generation American, the first on my mom's side, born on American soil to two immigrants who immigrated here to the United States from Guyana, South America in the early 70s. My entire family on both sides are from GT. So I'm Caribbean, I'm West Indian, very proud, very, very proud of that. And I think that a lot of my journey has been shaped by that because my great aunt came to this country in the late 60s, I believe, and she put our entire family on her back. She sponsored my grandmother and my mother and her siblings one by one until she got everyone here. So I grew up understanding that and understanding the price that they paid for me to just have a shot at the American dream. And it's something I've taken very, very seriously my whole entire life. And so I am a proud Guyanese American.
Let's get it. Let's get it. I love that story. I like how you said about the whole sponsoring and one by one. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes it takes, little small steps before you get to the bigger picture. So one by one, obviously. So congratulations to you and your whole family on that. My question next to you is like, what does your culture mean to you? And like, what are some of the lessons you learned from like your family at a young age that you just like never forget?
Ooh, wow, that's a good one. My culture means a lot to me because it is a symbol of the sacrifices that ancestors long before me made so that I can have the opportunity to do the things I do today. I actually have a painting hanging up in my bedroom above my bed that says, I am my ancestors' wildest dreams, because I truly believe that. And I believe that that is deeply rooted in my culture and the things that were instilled in me from young. My sister and I grew up in a household with a legacy passed down to us of family, specifically the eldest sister, being the backbone of the family and opening up doors and holding those doors open for other siblings and other family members to come through. So the earliest foundation that we have of that I have of that, is my great aunt, Eudora McLean, came to the United States. I believe it was the late 60s. She had a whole life in Guyana, and she had a vision and understood that, as the eldest, she had to make the leap to get to the United States to allow the rest of our family to prosper. And for the future generations, she understood that very keenly. And it's something that she instilled in me from a very young age. The big thing that a lot of immigrant children I know grapple with is that balance between your cultural identity from your parents, especially if you were born on U.S. soil and you're first generation, and then also like what it means to be American. And that was something instilled early on in me and my sister, is that we are Americans, right? But we also have this rich culture and this rich history behind us of our parents. And so I grew up in a Guyanese household. Like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
my parents spoke to us the way their parents spoke to them, which can sometimes be a little bit harsh, but I understood and give them grace because I knew where they were coming from. A lot of it mostly was that they were just doing the best they could to figure out how to find a way for us to succeed. And the main lesson that they pretty much banged into our heads was education.
Mm-hmm.
Education was the only way to actualize the vision of our ancestors, and also to ensure the best possible chance of not just success, but actually being like a human that contributes positively to our world. And so it's something that was instilled in me through the stories that my grandmother told, my grandmother Valda, through the stories that my grandmama Eudora told. Her stories were, West Indian people have a very interesting way in giving life lessons through these, like, what to some people they'll be weird, but like these metaphors, and so
Mm,
one of the
yeah.
things,
Yeah.
yeah, these
You're 100%
metaphors.
right. You're right.
Yeah. And these, like, one of the things that is ringing so clearly to me now, when we were little and we did something wrong, my grandmama, she would say, see, does let a bill in more jail for all ya. And we didn't understand when we were kids. And we would be like, why is it that, and it was something she would say all the time. We'd be like, why is it that the end game of me not cleaning my room is jail? And what she meant by that was that at that young age, that her thing was, if we were not performing up to the highest standards in our home, then there should be concern that we were not performing to our highest standards in public and in school. And
Mm,
everyone
mm,
is
mm.
clear now that the prison pipeline is built by using test scores of elementary school children in the United States. So that was her way of warning us of that. And so she would have these different little things she would say to us growing up, that now we're adults and it's all clear that what she meant and why she said it. And I think part of it did definitely, instill some fear in us, but that was like the way that our family communicated with us to, like, really drive home the point of, like, you have to do certain things in life. You have to be a productive citizen. You have to take care of your community. You have to take care of family members, things of that sort. And so, like,
Mm.
that's like the one thing that we always harp back on, even today. I mean, just like this week, we were talking about it, my sister and I and some friends, because you see what's going on in society right now. And I'm like, oh my God, grandmama was spot on. Like, she knew what she was talking about.
Mhm. It's when when you see things like that happen, you think back like when you were a child, you're like, oh, here we go with another story, right? Here we go
Yeah.
with another metaphor. But then as you get older as an adult, you really take an appreciation to what, your parents or your grandparents are kind of like put out there. You know what I'm saying? These guys are like fortune tellers in some
Yeah,
kind of way, and
absolutely.
to us as kids growing up, it's like, oh yeah, here we go. Your parents are always saying something, but again, that's just that Caribbean culture, that lifestyle, right? So, as a
Yeah.
child, when you were growing up, like, what did you want to become when you were growing up? Now,
That is I'm an 80s kid, and um 80s kids, especially Caribbean 80s kids, you had four options: lawyer, doctor, um nurse, or something
hmm
with a pension. And yeah, that those were
yeah.
the options. And early on, I was a very talkative kid, like constantly like my parents would go to the back to school night, and it would be the same thing. Shameika excessively talks in class. Like, it just was like this thing.
Oh.
And so I think my dad acknowledged that early on. And so he kind of tried to figure out like different things. So they had me like in dance lessons and singing lessons. And I was playing the flute and playing the piano and all these different things to try to figure out. And he was very much like, lawyer or doctor. And so for the longest time, I would say up until about the 10th grade, I thought I was going to go to medical school and become a doctor, and specifically wanted to be a surgeon. And there was a show that was on, I can't remember. It was called Operation, or it was like a
Mm-hmm.
surgery show on like
Mm-hmm.
one of these channels a long
Yep.
time ago. This will be the mid to late 90s. And I used to watch it all the time because I was like, I wanted to build up like a tolerance for like blood and stuff. And then what changed it was when I was, first of all, I realized early on I was not good at math and science. I realized that in high school by the time I got to high school biology, but I was still kind of trying to see if I could flush it through. And so I started going on college tours, and I went on a tour. I went to Radford University
Mm-hmm.
in Bradford, Virginia. And it was like I was part of this thing called, I think it's known today as Upward Bound, but it was,
Yes, yes, Upward
yes.
Bound, classic right there.
And so my chapter was called Project Discovery. I went to high school in Roanoke, Virginia. It was called Project Discovery. I had an amazing mentor there. And so what they did was try to get us as much exposure. It was specifically for Black students. And so I went on this college tour, and I signed up for the track for like folks who wanted to like major pre-med or whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
there was a cadaver. And I was like,
Oh,
and they said, okay, we're going to go in the room now, and we're going to examine. It was someone who donated their body to science. And I was like, wait, what do you mean? That's a dead body? They're like, yeah, the person donated a body to science. I was like, yeah,
no.
I
You're like,
can't
nah,
do
not
this.
me. Yeah, yeah,
Not
cut
me.
that. Let's get out of there. I've seen too many scary movies. I'm good.
Yeah, I was like, I'm not doing that. And I remember the student, because I think she was pre-med, I can't remember. She was like, and you want to be a doctor? And I remember in that very moment, I was like, oh, shoot,
You're right. I don't want to be a doctor. I'm out.
the doctor thing is not going to work out. And it was that same year I got highly involved in FBLA, Future Business Leaders of America. I was in DECA. I can't remember what DECA stands for, but it was I was in a fashion marketing program that allowed you to go to school for half the day, and then you had to work a job in fashion. So I worked at JCPenney. So I started to get really, really inclined with business. And so one of the things that kept popping up, I was a total nerd as a kid. Like I watched the news. The news was a big deal in my household. We had to read the newspaper and watch the news to
Oh
understand what
wow.
was doing.
You had to do both.
Yeah, we had to do both. But one of the things I would always watch, like whatever, I don't think it was CNBC at the time, but I would watch a lot of business things. And I noticed that a lot of the high ranking folks that in my little mind deemed as powerful people, they had JD MBAs. And so I was like, you know what? I think I'm gonna go this business route and become a lawyer. And I was very talkative. So everyone in my family was like, yeah, you'd make a great lawyer. You like to argue all the time. Like, this is great. And so
Utilizing it. Yep. That talent.
I switched, yeah, after that experience at Rapper, I switched and I was like, okay, I'm going to be a lawyer. And so that was pretty much the driving force. I knew I would be like a lawyer at like a bank or something. And I always had aspirations after that decision to be a CEO. So I was one of those kids that I kind of knew, but then I switched. But then I was also like one of those kids early on that was like, I want to be a ballerina, a fireman, a doctor, and a lawyer, and a piano player. And it's like, but I had a family that was very old school. It's like, girl, they would say, oh, Shameika's all over the place. You got to figure something out. And so that's how I kind of landed on med school. And then later
Got you.
Switched over to wanting to be a lawyer.
Now, could you tell us about your time at like St. John's University and like the reason that you gravitated to like media studies and communication?
Yes. Oh my God. So this is actually a lot of my life is these divine moments, these full circle moments where something I thought was supposed to be did not end up being. And then it went in a direction that was actually for the better. So I went to St. John's University in Queens, New York. It was my number one school. They made me wait until April before they told me I was accepted. It was the most daunting process of my life to the point where I actually was about to enlist in the Marines. The Marine came over to the house. I graduated high school in 2001, and this was around the time when George Bush was getting into office. And I remember the Marine was like, yeah, we're going to increase the pay and all these great things. And the main thing was I didn't have to cut my hair. I had really long hair at the time. And so I was very nervous. And then finally I got in. I was like, okay. So I, at the time, was in Virginia. I'm from upstate New York, but my mom moved us to Virginia in the late 90s. And I spent some time there, graduated high school, and was eager to get back. I remember hearing about St. John's University because my older cousins partied there. So I knew it was like,
yeah, they were known for the parties.
School. Yes. And
They
I'm
was
like,
known.
they were like legendary, the basketball team. I was like, oh, this is great. This is home. I went to St. John's, got in as a finance major. I started school the week before September 11th. I moved in the Tuesday before I moved in. Wednesday, I think we started classes and met my roommates, all that stuff, got acclimated. So I was a finance major. That semester, I was taking macroeconomics, business law, and some other stuff. And September 11th happens the Tuesday, September 11th, I think it was. And my university was closed for a few days. There were some folks at the school. We are in New York City, so nobody, for folks that were around September 11th, that morning when everything happened, we had no clue what was going on.
Everything shut down.
Everything shut down in New York City. It wasn't confirmed until like later that day. Like it was like, oh, this is a terrorist attack. And so my campus locked down, and we had time to think and reflect and all that good stuff. I had friends that there was a girl that lived with me, had two parents that were in the buildings that made it out. And so the next week I went back to class. I went to my macroeconomics class. I had a professor, Stanley Lawson. I'll never forget it. And he said, all of you need to go and change your majors. You're not going to get jobs. And I was like, what?
That's a hard one right there. You're like, wait, hold on. I've been doing this for the past couple of months now.
Get a job.
I'm doing good in this class too. And they're like, no.
I wasn't doing too bad. I was struggling. I've always struggled academically. I have ADHD that wasn't diagnosed until my early 30s, and a slight case of dyslexia. So I was always a student that struggled. Like I had to go to the review sessions and ask the professors and the teachers for extra help. And so like I was making my way through. I think I was pulling a B in that class. And so I went back, and ironically, my co-founder today of my company, which we'll talk about later, I went back to the dorms. My friend Daniela at the time, she was like, girl, come on over to the communication school. And I hadn't, I unfortunately, I'm from that generation that didn't really fully understand all of the career options other than what our parents told us. And it's completely okay. That's what a lot of folks my age group experience. But she was like, Danielle's like, come on over to communications. I'm like, damn, well, what will I do? And she was someone, Danielle is someone who has always known what she wanted to do. And she knew early on, from a teenager, she wanted to do TV and film. Like she wanted to work in TV and film. And so she was like, come on over. The classes are fun. And so I went the following week and I changed my major to communication arts, television and film at St. John's University. And from there on, I had so much great exposure. I was in New York City at the time. And so I took editing classes. I took radio production.
Yeah, he was in it.
I was in it. And St. John's had I think they still do today, I'm not sure, but they had a very, very strong TV and film program, film school, essentially, that they, if you wanted to work at the ABCs, the NBCs, in any form of production, that was the place to be. And so it kind of just worked out.
Yeah, so all that success at the school, like and in classes, shout out to Daniela, right, for giving me that insight, But how did you start your career after St. John's? After all of this, you got all this information, you're loving it, you're growing. Like, how was that experience for you? Like, what were some of the challenges you faced when you started off?
You guys are gonna die.
Uh-oh.
I did all that, and I could not I could not get
Uh-oh.
a job in communications. I ended up going to work for a bank, asset management. I went into investment.
Yee.
Yeah, I just, I think
You were
what
good in customer service. There was a little bit of communications right there.
yeah, yeah. And I actually so I worked full time while I was in undergrad full time. I don't know
Mm.
how I did it. Don't ask me. I mean, I'll be honest, I skipped a lot of class, but somehow figured it out. But I what that path at that time in the early 2000s, if you wanted to have a job in communications, whether it's PR, go work for NBC, the Today Show, any of those, you had to do an internship. And back then, the companies were allowed to exploit kids and not pay them any money. And I was never in a position to do a free internship. I always had a job. I've had a job since I was 14 years old. And the only time that I was like involuntarily unemployed was like in 2020 when I lost my job. But I
Mm.
always had a job. I always had to work. And so I did not have the luxury to be able to do a internship where I would make no money. And so what I tried to do was through cover letters. I wrote a crazy ass cover letter to Puff. I don't even know why I wrote this crazy letter, basically threatening him like if he didn't give me a
You said
job
Puff,
that
like
I
Puff
would,
Daddy?
yeah, like Puff.
Okay. The Diddy.
Crazy,
Okay.
crazy note to Diddy back in early 2000 while I was in college, where I was just like, either you hire me or I'm gonna come and take your company one day, type of thing. I think I was like on this thing where I was like, I'm
Oh,
Oprah. I don't know
you were
why.
like, I'm taking everything. That's
Yeah.
it. I respect that. I
Um,
respect that.
yeah, I tried that whole like recruiting path. I think I had applied to Def Jam, but at the time, Def Jam would only take you if you were an intern. Like that's how Def Jam hired. And so I thought I wanted to do the music thing because I was connecting it back to law. I knew I needed to take 2 years and work because at the time they were saying that the law schools didn't like the students that went straight through. They wanted you to go get life experience. And it was in this interesting phase where like law schools wanted somebody who was like, a sociology major, but did theater on the side and, went to the Peace Corps, something like that. And
Mhm.
so I was trying to tie it back because at one point I thought I was strongly leaning towards entertainment law. So I was trying to get a job in music, didn't work out. All of the recruiting, the way St. John's had it at the time was like you were in this, it was this system based on your GPA and these other
Mhm.
tricks that I have no clue what they put together, but I was only getting recruiting for the banking jobs. I got one interview at ABC News and I completely bombed it because I forgot to turn my cell phone off. And my cell phone rang twice in the interview. And I knew
Ooh.
I was like,
Listeners, you hear
yeah,
that, listeners? Listeners, that's a gem right there. That's a gem. Turn your cell phones off, right?
yeah.
Undivided attention. I'm assuming all of these things that are happening during that time, like how soon did you realize that school didn't prepare you for like some of the challenges that you were going to encounter like in this time?
Honestly, I think I knew it while I was there because I can be honest and say I love St. John's. I had a great time. I the people I met at St. John's are my closest friends today. My co-founder of my company, Daniela, she and I met at St. John's and connected instantaneously. And um, I'm grateful for the relationships and the folks and the experience of like being on your own, having to get up and go to class and all that. But honestly and truly, St. John's is a Catholic university and nothing against Catholic university. I was still taking religion classes. I had a class called Marriage and the Family. So like I was not learning anything that was really setting me up. I think what I was learning was life skills and hustle and how to like work with people and navigate certain types of people in the workplace. I think that's really what my college education set me up for. And so I knew early on, like, and just based on the classes, I would say I took a class called Discover New York. You know what I mean? Like it was
Mhm.
nothing, and there were the core classes like the TV
True.
and stuff was great, but I knew that I had to get out into in the workforce, get out in the world and actually do stuff.
Yeah.
To like learn and
You
like
want to hit the, yeah, that's, and it's
yeah,
sometimes the best way of learning, actually in the field. You could read all the textbooks you want, you could look at all the videos online, and listen to those audiobooks, but being in the field is a totally different ball game. But like,
Yeah.
I want to really ask this question now. Like, you went to school and you pride yourself on the whole media stuff, right? You're like, that was like an era in your life where you were really enjoying it. The things, not saying it came easy to you, but you had a lot of fun doing it. Like, how tough was it, like, to start your career like working in finance versus working in the media studies?
Honestly, I just kind of breezed right in because at the time I was working at Citibank out in Long Island. I had a full time role at one of their call centers. I was doing this thing, it was retention, where people would call in. There was this product called Credit Protector, where the Citibank would charge you like a certain amount of cents per a dollar of your balance, and like if something happened, you could call in this insurance. It was essentially like an overpriced insurance policy. And so I was doing retention on that. I was working in the bank, and I was getting exposure to like, I would hear certain things and like go home and like look it up or whatever. And so I actually was able to use that job at Citibank. And prior to that, because I thought I was going to have this finance career. So my first year, even though I switched majors, I got a job working at Merrill Lynch for the summer as a receptionist.
Good
So
company, good company.
yeah, so I knew I couldn't do these free internships, but I was like, I'm gonna stack my resume with all these big name companies that
Yes, yes, yes. Smart move.
everyone's interning at. I'm gonna have a job there. I'm gonna get a check out of them. And so
Mhm.
like that's what I was able to do. That's how I was able to have a strong resume coming out of undergrad, with actual like jobs where I had
Smart move.
metrics to
Smart
say,
move.
oh, I did this, I saved this amount of people from
Mm-mm.
canceling or whatever. And so it was very seamless for me. My first job in finance was in an investment bank in New York. It was at the time, it was called Mellon Financial. It was a very storied bank. And I was able to, transition into that role. It was a sales analyst role, I think it was, where I was doing everything. I was working on a portfolio, and the woman that hired me at the time, this amazing woman, Lillian Cant, she
Mm.
saw something in me early on. I interviewed with all the banks. I interviewed with Franklin Templeton, Mellon, Lehman Brothers. Whew, thank God that
Mm.
didn't come through. And Goldman.
Yeah,
I wanted to
okay.
work for Goldman so bad, but I could never get past the second round interview. But when I ended up at Mellon, this woman saw something in me, and she put me on the institutional side of the asset management, with all of the global portfolio clients. And then she also put me on their wealth management side. So I would help out the wealth management team. So I was seeing how, things were doing. I figured out how rich people protect their money early on.
Yeah, that's a good
Um,
place to be at to
yeah,
learn those things.
all of that
Like,
stuff. So it was very seamless for me, and I actually enjoyed it. I really had a good time those first 3 years. I graduated college in 2005 and started. I did a summer abroad, came back in August, and started working in September. Like I landed that job within like 2-3 weeks. I was like hustling hard,
mhm. So
and
then, I was gonna say, so with this experience that you have going on, like you have you. I like how the fact you were talking about you had to stack, you want to stack your resume. You're trying to work at all these companies, apply for all these things, but like throughout this whole time, you're still a black woman working in corporate America.
yeah.
Like, what I'm saying? Like, you're shooting to be in corporate America. Like, what are you thinking during this time? Like, obviously you might not be seeing individuals that speak like you, dress like you, from your culture. You're trying to climb up this corporate ladder. Like, what's going through your head during that time?
Yeah, I mean, I knew early on. First of all, for the longest, I was the only black woman in the room, and I was the only black person in the room, and the youngest person in the room. So like, I had those three things, but I like kind of flipped it in my head and like took pride in it. And so I was like, great, if I'm going to be the youngest person in the room, the only black person in the room, and the only black woman, then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna like blow this thing out of the water. And some of it was to my detriment. I was always the one that worked late. I would work till 1 a.m. sometimes. And I had just had this thing. I was like, no, girl, you got to be back in that office by 8 a.m. sharp. Like, you can't be late. Like, you can't let them see you slipping, you know? And so I just really like drove in on that. I also, in my mind,
A lot of pressure right there.
yeah, definitely a lot of pressure, but it was like, for me, it was towards an end goal, right? And so
Okay.
I was like, I'm in my 20s. I'm like 22 years old. I'm in New York City. I've got 7 years to like just do any and everything that I can to make sure that I put my career in a certain place where then in my 30s, it's just I just soar. And so I didn't care. Like, I didn't travel in my 20s. I remember my friends were going away doing a ton of stuff. I was dedicated
You was
to
locked in.
I was
You
locked
was
in.
you was locked in, and during this time, I know you worked for, I believe one of the companies was American Express. You were working for a lot of companies, right?
Yeah. So I was at Mellon for 3 years and I was about to get promoted. And we did this cool thing in 2008. I was 25 years old. We elected Barack Obama to presidency.
Hmm.
And something about him and Michelle, I was just like, and my company was we weren't doing things, but we had clients that were responsible for the economic calamity that was the recession of 2008. And I just was like, my health was starting to deteriorate at the time. I was like drinking Red Bulls to get by. I had got diagnosed with polycystic ovarian disease and my weight shot up. I gained 90 pounds in 18 months. A lot of things started happening to me physically. And I was like, this isn't worth it. And so I left Mellon right in the middle, September 15th, like right when Lehman announced they had exposure. And I took some time off and I took a receptionist job at this like education company for like a year and some change. And then I went over to American Express because American Express, I put them on my vision board. They had always been a place to me where Black people could thrive. They had a Black CEO. I remember when Ken Chenault was appointed CEO when I was in high school. And it just always was in the back of my head as like a really cool place where not only I could work, but thrive. And so
Hmm.
that's when I made that transition. I went over there. I initially applied for an analyst role. I didn't get the analyst role. And then a few months later, they brought me back as a executive assistant. I was like, I don't care. I just want to get in the building. I worked for this really cool woman. Her name was Janie Whiteside. She was just this super dope ass executive who like rose very quickly, and she saw something in me and took a shot. And when opportunity came up for me to get promoted to the next role, she like advocated for me. And within 11 months, I got my first promotion at American Express. I got promoted
Okay.
to
Not even within a year. Let's get it. Come on now.
it was 11 months exactly. I started in
You was
January.
locked in, locked in.
Locked in.
I'm
Yeah.
noticing something right now throughout this whole interview. You've been locked in, and it's something that I remember your family members had instilled in you at a young age, and you just kind of like taking that information and kind of like applying it to your academics, to your jobs, experiences in corporate America, where you're able to, something that would have taken someone 3 years to probably get that, that promotion. You're able to get it within 11 months.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, how did you not get lost in corporate America? Like, with all these moving parts, you got all these things going on. You're inclining up the ladder. You know that you're, one of the only, if anything, African American women, in that position, growing, right? How are you not getting lost in this whole thing?
I actually did get lost. I got promoted 4 times within the first 4 years I was at Amex, and then it stopped. And what happened was I hit the ceiling because I didn't have an MBA. And I realized that I was like, the exact words I remember saying was, I got swallowed in because it's a big, Amex is a massive, massive company. And I think I got very comfortable because I was no longer the only Black woman and the only woman, the youngest. Like, Amex had Black people working there. My peers at the time, I'm still connected to day. I just saw my friend Ashil in Atlanta back in May, and he was an analyst the same time I was. We had a good, strong network. And so one of the things I'm a big believer on is you have to know when your time is expired before the clock ticks out. And so I realized early on, I won't say early on, in like year 6, I was like, yeah, it's time. And so I made the pivot. And what I was doing was I was applying to business school. So 2016, I think it was. Actually, let me back up. 2011, still wanting to be a lawyer, I applied to law school. I got rejected to all my law schools on my birthday on April 8th, 2011.
No, no, no. She said on the birthday.
Yes, on my birthday. I remember
Oh,
I was in a
did you?
taxi headed to Rosa Mexicana, and one by one, Georgetown rejected it. Harvard Law School rejected it.
Wait, all of them were sending the email at the same time?
Yes, because they all released, like, I guess the same day for my round. And so
Jeez.
the only place I didn't get rejected was Fordham. Fordham put me on the wait list. But I can be honest and say at that time, I did not understand fully the politics of advocating for yourself. I didn't realize I was supposed to write a letter or call the admissions office and be like, I really, really want to go here, you know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I let that go. And then I was like, let me see how much I rise up within American Express. And then I hit that ceiling and I realized I got to go get an MBA. So I actively worked on that. I got down, I had the interview at Tuck, Dartmouth in New Hampshire, in 2017. And December 15th, I was waiting to get the call that I got in and I didn't get in. And so that was like another pivot for me where I realized, okay, because the thing was, I was like, okay, I'll leave Amex and go into business school and then come back out,
And then try to pull.
and do
Okay,
something else.
I see. Now, what was like 2 of the proudest moments at American Express while you were there before you had to figure out the whole MBA thing?
So one of the things was when I started off working in the executive office. First was a SVP, and the second one was the president of American Express at the time, the president of the global merchant service business. And then I moved into the business. So I had like that boot camp and then moved into the business. When I moved into the business, I was handed a portfolio of merchants. So American Express is broken up into 3 silos, essentially. You have the card members. Those are the people that have the card that swipe and pay with the card. Then you have the merchants. Those are the businesses that accept the card. And then you have like the operations of the whole thing. And so I moved into the business and went on to the merchant side of the business. And I was given a portfolio of we had at the time it was the regional client group. The regional client group was a portfolio of over 10,000 merchants with American Express that were not being marketed to. And so the goal at the time was to figure out how to get, we called them at the time, green dollars, recurring revenue into Amex from these merchants. And one of the proudest moments was that there was a tool created to market to these. It was like a self-service tool to market to these merchants to do B2B to C marketing campaigns. And so I grew that tool over a year. And I have the numbers on my resume. I think my portfolio brought in something like 14 million in charge volume. I can't remember. But within that year of that tool growing, then the leadership came back to me. They're like, hey, we want to evolve it even more so that other portfolios can use it. So I was part of the team that essentially revamped that tool that was being used by merchants. And then we rolled it out. And I want to say till this day, they're using it. I know when I left in 2018, I believe like our national client group, they were using it for some clients, because what it did was it took away the need for them to actually hire a human to engage that person. And so I'm really proud of that. It was called Amex Offers. It still exists today. If you have an Amex card, you log in, you see those offers. Like I was on the team, the earliest team that rolled that out, and contributed a great deal, I would say, to what that program ultimately looks like today. And then the second thing was I worked for the president of Global Merchant Services, so I had direct contact with Mr. Chenault's office. And so one year, it was the year of Hurricane Sandy, because I remember it was supposed to be November and then we canceled it because of Sandy, and we did it the following year. But we had this thing, it's the USTA, the US Travel Association. I was responsible for bringing 40 C-suite executives and their delegates into Amex for a dinner. It sounds very simplistic, but I'm talking about Lower Manhattan Financial District at 5 o'clock. And these are people that are not cool with using like a freight elevator. Like they want to be ushered up. And so that was a really exciting time for me. It's one of my proudest moments, because I felt like I knocked it out the park. I built a team. I assembled a team of folks that worked the event that night, matched people up with their, the specific table for whatever brand they were currently the client manager to. And really, like, that was like a big moment for me, where even my boss had sent me a note and was like, wow, you knocked that out the park. So I'm really proud of that. And it gave me an opportunity to kind of really like get exposure to the C-suite and see how things operate, and have an understanding of what that type of responsibility and ultimately power within an organization means.
True. Yep.
So I would say those are my two proudest moments when I was at American Express.
Yeah, you was really pulling up at American Express, and definitely they were very pleased to have someone like you. And it seemed like every time you were in your position, it's not like you settled. You were like, I want more. And it's not like you wanted more for yourself, because you knew that the more you wanted for yourself, the more you would be able to help out your community, meaning in your office and the people around. So growing a portfolio that large, leaving an impact on American Express and the people you work with is amazing. Now, could you currently give us talk to us a little bit more about like your current role and the company that you work for now? Let's talk about that.
So right now I'm at the Honey Pot Company. I am director, chief of staff to the two co-founders. And I work, I report directly into the CEO, Beatrice Dixon. And so like, this has actually been one of the coolest roles I've had. When I was at Amex, I learned about the chief of staff role. At American Express, it was broken down into 3 layers. You had a senior, it was a manager assistant, which was a senior manager level chief of staff role. They had a director assistant, which was the director level chief of staff role, and then they had a vice president assistant, and it was a VP level with a large amount of like revenue generating responsibility. And so I remember seeing that role at Amex and wondering like, damn, how can I get that? And I connected, Amex is a coffee chat culture is what I call it. Your career is what you make of it there. How you connect with people is how you rise up within a company. So I was always connecting with people. I was a member of our Black Employee Network and had a leadership position for a short time on there. So I was able to connect with different people. And I remember seeing like this chief of staff role, and I worked with the chief of staff in my role as senior executive assistant to the president of Global Merchant Services. And so I saw what she did, and I was like, I could do that, And so full circle, that's what I'm doing today at the Honey Pot. And so in my role, I am responsible for the administrative and the strategic sides of the office of the CEO. And so no 2 days are alike. This morning I was, booking travel for our co-founder. And then this afternoon I was working on strategy and planning for an executive leadership team meeting that we're having that we do quarterly with our executive leadership team, which is essentially all of the people leaders within the Honey Pot. And then, when I get off with you today, then I need to spend some time going through emails and preparing for calibration for member, the person I manage at the honeypot, for the team that I have. My small team is expanding, so I need to work on a JD and think through what I want my team to look like in 2024. So it's a mosh posh of things. I call it CEO school. I'm learning how to be a CEO right now. I'm learning how to be a founder
Let's get
right
it.
now.
Let's
Yeah.
get it. Come on, let's get to
Um,
that. You're
yeah.
locked in. You are locked in. I like that.
Yes, yes. I'm locked in. I will say I'm not as I don't want to use the word aggressive because I don't like it. It always is negatively applied to Black women. But
You're
I would
just smart.
say I'm not as
You
intense as I was in the past. I feel like I have a grasp on it now. I know my job. I know my role. I know what I'm responsible for. And I know the targets I need to hit. And I'm able to do that in a way that is conducive to my mental health and also my professional development
mm.
and growth.
And it's what you're really doing at. You're moving with intention. That's
Yeah.
really what you're moving with intention. And I want to know a little bit more about the mission. At Honeypot. Like, talk about that.
Yeah. The honey pot is a plant derived feminine hygiene brand. However, we're moving more towards we want to be the number one personal care brand, like natural personal care brand. And so the brand was born out of Beatrice's incredible story where she was battling a medical issue and was given the ingredients for the solution to that medical issue from her grandmother in a dream. And she didn't just keep it for herself. She understood that there are a lot of people that were dealing with this same issue or other things. And the brand was really born out of that. And so the focus of the brand now is really just not just having these beautiful, efficacious products that are natural and not harmful to humans, but respecting all humans, right? And where they are in their journey. And also destigmatizing a lot of the conversation and the shame and guilt that comes with having certain genitalia and having the normal things that happen with that genitalia for all humans. And so, there's a lot of, there's a lot of crazy legislation happening around women's bodies, and our goal is to just do our part through our products, our education. The honeypot, we strive on educating our humans that use the product, educating humans that don't use the products about just the human body and having a respect and appreciation for it, using proper words, vagina, destigmatizing it, periods, helping folks understand that humans understand that the color of your blood has different meanings. There's all
Mm,
these different things that happens to our bodies that have been censored, and they've been censored and just stigmatized, where people aren't comfortable. Before I started, I was using the honeypots products early on. But I was using tampons from another company. We won't say the name. And I noticed that like my flow was crazy. And I had a conversation with Beatrice about it, and I switched over and my flow was different, right?
mm,
So
mm, mm, mm.
there's all these things out there that impact our health. And the cool thing, and I do attribute it as a consumer, not as an employee. I attribute it the change in dynamic of the shelf of feminine hygiene. No one had cooling pads, herbal pads before we did. I feel like the honeypot is leading the charge and really, really changing how these things are looked at, how people view them, how people discuss them, how we're educated on them. And I'm really proud to be a part of that, and to play a small role in that through the work that I do daily.
Mm. And it's it is it could be overwhelming, when you're looking for the product that fits you best, right? If you don't know how to do the research or know what is the right way to research, it could be overwhelming. But it seems that the company, your company, has done a phenomenal job in regards to getting that information together for an individual, and being so they can make an educated decision on whether or not that product is going to work for them. Now,
Yeah.
we talk about we were talking about advocating for yourself, when we were talking about corporate America, but like, I want to know, now that you're in a position of leadership and from your previous positions, now obviously right now, like, what advice would you give to, Black women or immigrants who are afraid to like advocate?
Ooh, this is a good one. I think first you have to do the inner self work, right? Um, you have to get real clear, and this is advice I give to friends when they're asking about like next steps and stuff like that, is that you got to get real clear on what's important to you. What are your values? What do you prioritize in your life? What is your moral compass, right? Because capitalism is a brutal sport. And if you do not have a moral compass and a whatever your spiritual practice is, if that stuff is not in alignment, then you're not going to be able to advocate for yourself. So I would say the first thing is get your moral compass in order. What matters to you? What do you want your legacy? There is all this talk about generational wealth and legacy, and I feel like there's some sauce getting lost in the conversation. I think about my legacy often. And it ties back to the legacy of my grandparents and my grandmama. Like, I think about the legacy she left behind, and I'm like, she did all that for me to eclipse her. I'm not in a position to deliver mediocre results on legacy. And so I think about what I want my legacy to look like. Think about when you close your eyes. I always say, when I transition and the ancestors call me home, what is it that you want people to say about you? What is it you want people to remember about you? And then what you have to do is you have to align yourself with people and organizations that are in alignment with that. If you are not okay with fracking and pollution, you can't go work for a company that does that. If you're
True.
against tobacco, then you can't go work for the law firm that lobbies for the tobacco companies. So you have to get really, really, really specific about what it is that matters to you. And then from there,
Purpose.
yes, your purpose, and you have to build your confidence. I can say, as a Black woman, I subscribed to all of the just the constant moving of the goalposts. I remember at one point when I got my nails done, I would only get one color because, colors were not deemed professional. Anytime I had a meeting or anything, prior to I didn't lock my hair. I wanted to lock my hair in the early 2000s, and my aunt pulled me aside and said, "Girl, you do that, you're not going to get a job at any law firm." And I didn't
That was,
lock,
yeah, that was a
right?
big thing.
That
That
was
was
a
a big
big
thing.
thing. I
Braids, locks, like,
all of it.
it was
Yeah,
like, if you were a person of color, a minority, and they're like, don't do it.
you
And it
can't do
was,
it.
it's a part of our culture, right? And
Yeah.
you're like, you can't do it. You can't do
Yep.
it. So it is scary to hear something like that. I have a conversation, with somebody and be like, oh yeah, I'm looking into getting my hair locked. Nope, don't do it. And you're like, wow. And it's
Yeah,
because of
didn't
a
do it
job.
because of a job. I wanted because I didn't want to have. I've also I had a mindset, and I still do. I want to make it very difficult for people to tell me no. I always say I prefer a slow yes over a quick no. But if you're going to tell me no, I want to make it so difficult for you to tell me no. And so I subscribe to all that. I would pull my hair back in a bun. I didn't do the stockings. I never succumbed to the stockings thing, but I did the skirts, the suits, all that. And it was when I hit 30, and I code switched. I code switched all the time. And and I hid the type of music that I loved. I am a hip hop. Hip hop raised me. You know what
I
I'm
mean, you
saying?
you was in the '80s that when hip
Yeah,
hop originated. Come on now.
exactly. Hip
In the
hop,
boogie down Bronx.
all of that. And so I I can be honest and say I did succumb to the pressures early on in my career. But when I turned 30, I remember I met with my mentor, Susan Chapman Hughes at the time, and I said to her, I want the Shameika that you see turning up on the weekend at the bar, at the restaurant with her friends. I want that to be the same chick y'all see in the office on Monday. And I just was like, I have to be my authentic self because I cannot win being somebody else. And then it's not that I was like
It's hard. It's
completely,
harder to do that. It
yeah,
really is. It really
but I
is.
was dimming myself in essentially who I was authentically. And when I turned 30, I remember I went to Greece with my friend. We came back and I was like, I gotta change this whole thing up. And I just started just being myself. The way I speak in meetings is the same way I speak to my friends, the way I'm talking to y'all. You know, I use slang, spin the block, all of it. And so I just like, I'm just going to do it 100%. And it was then the confidence came. And as my confidence built further and further and further, I just got to the point where I was like, you know what? It is what it is. It doesn't matter, if people have a bias, it doesn't matter what you're going to do. And one of the people that I love her, I've never met her yet, but I know our paths are going to cross one day. Bozoma St. John. When she was like, I'm gonna do my hair, my nails, all of it. I'm gonna have different color lipsticks, the color. My closet at one point, it was blacks and grays.
Great. That's right. Now you got to get the switch up.
Blacks and grays. I never wore red lipstick. I didn't wear red lipstick until I was like 32 years old. And everything was clear lip gloss, my glasses. Occasionally I'd wear contacts, but I really subscribed to all of that like white standardization of beauty and professionalism. And I just got to a point where I was like, I'm not doing it anymore. It's not me. It's not natural to me. And I'm doing a disservice to the next generation if I don't find my path through this me.
100%. Your
When I
future
did that,
generations, your kids down the line, you got to think twice. You really,
yeah,
really got to think twice. But it's a very hard decision, especially when you're in a corporate environment. You finally have what your family members had set out for you. They blood, sweat, and tears. You finally are living the American dream, and you don't want to come home empty-handed. You want to be like,
yeah,
look, do I kind of conform over here, or do I kind of like move in this direction and still try? But again, you kept on implementing it occasionally, letting people see it. And then after a while, people just start to, like you said, it's gonna be a hard no. Like, we kind of love this Shameika right here. Like,
yeah.
don't leave the office. Like, we need this energy. We need this person. You know what I'm saying? And I think this gives to like that Caribbean culture that that's inside of us. Like, it's very vibrant, it's very energetic, very like outgoing. So you can't let that, brush it under the rug. And it brings me to my next question about you being in Caribbean, being a Caribbean of Caribbean background, right? A lot of the guests on our show previously had talked about like, the 9 to 5 and stuff like that. But there's other opportunities on the side, which people are very passionate about. Seems like the Caribbean culture definitely know how to juggle several different opportunities, job opportunities, stuff like that. So could you speak about anyone that you're working on currently?
Yeah, I mean, I've been side hustling, I feel like my whole life. When I was in high school, I was working like 2 and 3 jobs. I don't know why. I'll be honest. I love money. I like having money to do what I want, go where I want,
Ain't
however.
nothing wrong with that. Ain't nothing wrong with
Yeah,
that,
so
girl.
I'm always thinking about. I remember a Will Smith quote. He was like, he's as nervous today when he goes to sleep about money as he was like when he was in West Philly, or whatever the case was. And so like money has always been a motivating factor for me, and I can admit that, and I'm proud of it. I don't see anything wrong with that. I have had several hot side hustles throughout the years. At one point, I had a catering business. I thought I was going to go on to become a chef and have a restaurant. I did a recreational program at a culinary school at ICE in New York. I was making wigs. I had turned.
Wow. Wow, wow,
Yeah,
wow.
I
The,
converted.
the industries you're talking about are not like really connecting. The chef to
They're not.
wigs is
Yeah.
is a massive difference. So kudos to you. You are just a talented individual.
Thank you. I'm glad you see it as talent because family and friends see it as scattered brain and all over the place. But I was just always trying to find something that I knew after I didn't get into business school or law school. I knew that entrepreneurship was somewhere in the path for me, but I just couldn't figure out what it was. I was like, I know I want to be a CEO. I just don't know of what. Right. And so I just kind of like, I'm somebody, I'll get an idea. I'll flush it out, see if it works. Do I like it? Does it make sense? Move on.
That's right. Got to keep it
And
moving. Keep it moving.
yep. And so I had a couple of things before, and then what I did also realize was that I am a creative who has been stifled. It's why I figured out it's why my brain works the way it was, the way I operated, the way I did as a kid, even the way I like organized my room that was not to my parents' satisfaction. All of that was because I was a creative, and it was like
Mhm.
buried inside of me. And so I had my friend Daniela. We would watch Scandal,
Mhm, mhm,
and
mhm.
we were there on the front lines of Shonda Rhimes' ascend into what I believe is TV history. I believe that Shonda Rhimes is going to have the same impact on the industry later on, the ways people spoke about Aaron Spelling. And every week we would watch it. And um, would tell Daniela, man, you could do this. Like, you could write this shit. Like, she's like, Shonda's great, but you're better, you know? And then one year I bought Final Draft. I said, if you're not going to do it, I'm going to like figure out a way for us to do it. And I bought us Final Draft, and I was like, okay, you write something, I'm going to figure out how to write something. And so then I started transitioning into screenwriting. I thought I would wanted to be a TV writer. But then, I'm pretty good with figuring out, I have no shame in saying I'm terrible at that. I'm not good at it or whatever. It's just not for me. I was like, I can write, but I'm not good at it. And so I was like, you know what? I want to I want to work in television and media, but I think I'm better as a producer. And so in 2019, I left New York. I moved to Los Angeles with no job. I
Mhm.
don't have the story about only having $700 in my bank account. I did have a good amount of money in my bank account, but I had no job December 2019, and then I ended up landing a job in February. But I moved with the specific intent of starting a media company. I didn't know what it was going to look like, but one of the best things that could happen to me, even though it was extremely stressful, was I lost my job in August of 2020. And I was home and I was watching the news every day and watching documentaries, and it all came full circle, and I figured out what it was. So the biggest, I would say, I don't want to say side hustle anymore because it actually is a company. We are a Delaware um, registered C Corp. I have a company I've co-founded with my friend Daniela. It's called Our Table Media.
Mhm.
And we are a woman-led, Black woman-led media entity focused on historical narrative um, through all platforms globally: TV, film, books, audio, you name it, whatever country where people of color had a story that existed, we're going to tell those stories. And so right now, I'm in an accelerator with Dream Ventures where I'm learning how to raise money and preparing to raise a pre-seed round for this venture. And things are moving pretty quickly. We have a podcast we're trying to launch late. We're going to launch later this year
Mhm. Mhm.
called Behind the Boardroom. So in addition to my work at the Honey Pot and other little side things I do, this is the biggest right now that I'm essentially
Mhm.
preparing to transition in the next few years into full-time co-founder and CEO of Our Table Media.
Come on, come on. Personally, I am truly inspired from our conversation today and all the work that you have done, the people you've connected with, and more importantly, you just locking in on
Thank you.
everything that you touch, everything that you see. There is no limitations or the word limitation does not come close to your name, right? It's not even in the vicinity. You're like, you know what? If it's there, I'm going after it. I'm gonna go full out, and if it doesn't work or I don't like it at the end, I'm gonna keep it moving. And you don't sit on something for too long. You're like, you know what? I like you said, you got to know when your time is about to expire, and not when your time is expired, because then it's a
Yeah.
whole different ball game at that point in time. You don't really have the leverage to move the way you want to move when that happens. You have dropped a significant amount of gems, and I appreciate you just taking the time to really just be present with us, sharing those goods and those bads, and your times at St. John University. We have anybody that's a really good university, and then working for all these amazing corporations, being in corporate America, to now, you like you said, in the next couple of years or so, in the next couple of months, you're going to transition full time, and this is all you right here. This is not working for the next company and working on a different and learning different cultures of different organizations. You're gonna be developing your own culture, your own thing. So, and you're doing it right now currently. So congratulations, much love, a lot of success to you and your team, and also Daniela as well too.
Thank you. And just for clarification, I won't transition into full-time CEO of Our Table Media probably for the next 24 months, but I'm preparing for it.
Yes,
And
100%. Yeah.
learning how to be CEO and co-founder from Beatrice and Simon at the Honeypot Company. So it's a transition that's in the works right now, but not yet. I will still be at the Honeypot.
Okay, Rock. I know you will. I know you will. But you out here doing it. You moving and grooving. So, any last words?
Yeah, I would say, you know, listen, we have one life to live, and you cannot pour from an empty cup. You have to prioritize yourself, and you got to advocate for yourself at all times, because if you're not looking out for you, nobody else will. And if what we've seen over the last few years is that everybody is out for themselves, and it's not anything, it's just society. It's way
Yeah.
we've been conditioned as humans. And I would love for us all to find a way to like actually care about one another, but we got to focus on our individual selves doing that small part. But I would just say, like, listen, as and this is I'm giving you guys actually a glimpse into the speech I'm going to give when I win an Oscar in the next couple of years.
Come on, speaking into existence.
I have a moral. This is how I look at it. As Black people, as immigrants, however you identify, you have a moral responsibility to do everything you can possible while you have time on this earth. If it's, in our case, storytelling, I have a moral responsibility to the ancestors to tell the stories that I need to tell, about the forgotten and lost Black people in American history. You have a moral responsibility to put your art out, your talent, whatever it is. You cannot keep it to yourself. You have to put it out there, whether it's a podcast, whether it's a story about how you've overcome something, whatever that is unique and special to you as a human while you are on this earth, and you get to wake up every day and open your eyes and walk and talk, whatever. You have a moral responsibility to share it with the world. You cannot keep it to yourself. And if you keep it to yourself, there are going to be consequences that are not just for you, but it's going to have impact on the generations to come. If you're following the news, if you even just read Twitter, you see what's going on. So whatever it is you have that's special about you inside, you got to put it out there. And listen, you can put it out there, and if people rock with it, they do. If they don't, but there's going to be someone. They may not speak up. They may not say anything. There's going to be someone that it's going to have impact on. And just for that one person, like, you have to do it. So, just rise up to whatever it is that you're feeling, that your talent is. And, we have all these tools. I'm like, we are so, like, the internet was early when I was in high school. Like, the the Gen X and Gen Zs today, they have access that we did not have access to. Use it. Technology has removed the barrier of entry to a lot of industries, and we're very fortunate for that. So we have no excuse whatsoever. So my final word is just do it. Like you have to do it. You absolutely have to do it, no matter what it takes. It's not going to be easy. I know Instagram has us all messed up and we all think that things are quick and fast, but
Yeah.
commit to something, put in the
Yeah.
work and put it
Commit.
out there, share it with the world.
Well, Shameika, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And those last words are very powerful, you know, letting people know like, look, it's up to you to make that choice if you really want it. And I think your story is a clear indication of that. You never really, you know, settled with what came your way. You kept on incline, and you never know what's around the corner unless you open those doors. So to the listeners, thank you again for joining us again, Shameika. Thank you so much again for your time. And I want to let the listeners know, if you want to hear more inspirational stories like Shameika, please check us out on ZakaConnect.com. Follow our social at Zaka Connect and follow our feed, Zaka, wherever you listen to your podcast.